there's a dream job out there for everyone, and we just need to help people find those and help companies find people. We can create an opportunity for that match to happen on a skills level. Then we'll see the door being widened up for so many more people who to find their dream job that maybe would have been discounted otherwise because they have a non-traditional career path. Skills-based hiring is really looking beyond those traditional measures. So CVs, which tend to include things like work, sort of experience or education, and hiring on that basis. Testing someone's skills and having clear, objective data to make hiring decisions based on what they can do is a strong predictor of job success. Over time, we're going to see organizations relying more on things like the human skills, because they will become the things that sort of endure in the time of more advanced sort of AI transformation.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Leaders in Talent podcast. And today's guest is Olive Turon, the head of people and Hi, Olive. Hi, Olive. Olive is the head of people and culture at TestGorilla, but Olive's career is anything but traditional. So that's exactly what this conversation is going to make so fascinating. Because Olive started out as a finance analyst in banking, made a leap to Google to lead sales in its cloud business, helped run Academy London, then pivoted into consulting, and eventually landed at TestGorilla, first as the chief of staff, before stepping in your current role as the head of people and culture at TestGorilla. Olive, wow. What a versatile and bold career path. And it to me, like, right, we're going to be talking about skill-based hiring. And if anything, when I see and when we've discussed your career path before, right, it feels that you are the living proof of skill-based hiring in terms of before it even maybe have a name. Can you tell me a little bit more about your different jumps and how this materialized, and also how in maybe when you apply to different jobs or when you had interviews with different jobs, on how people reviewed your profile and your resume?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for asking and thanks for having me here today.
Of course. Yeah.
Excited. Looking forward to this conversation for a while. So yes, when you sort of condense my CV into a minute or so, it sounds really eclectic. It kind of doesn't make sense. And that's fine. I'm very proud of my career. I'm very proud that it's taken many different twists and turns. And I think it does make sense in the job that I have today. I'll explain why that is in a second. Maybe we'll talk about sort of, I'll end my answer as to why it makes sense. But you asked about sort of how during the process it sort of happened and how people responded to me jumping around so much. And by the way, this happened probably over the span of, let's say, just under 10 years or so, that I did all those different kind of hops. And I think I was probably, now knowing a little bit more about the hiring market, how difficult it is to move around and find dream jobs, which honestly was only it's only really become more and more apparent to me over the past few years of working at TestGorilla and being at the heart of HR tech. I think I was partly very lucky in that the kinds of things that I was applying for when I was moving around quite a bit, I was meeting people who were looking for candidates who were interested and had a passion. And I'm quite a passionate and excitable person. I think that comes across in interviews. Especially early on in my career, I knew quite clearly when I was at a certain role, a certain point of time, and knew that I've kind of, squeezed everything that I wanted out of that particular opportunity. And maybe whether it was time to move on and what I wanted to kind of take from a previous role and transport into a new one.
Are you facing market volatility, need to hire quickly, or have a team that sits idle? Meet Matcher, your flexible recruitment and sourcing partner. Scale your recruitment capacity up or down without compromising on quality. Trusted by Booking.com, Miro, Heineken, Grammarly, and Deal, Matcher is the RPO disruptor making waves in Europe and the US. For scale-ups and corporates, Matcher covers engineering, go-to-market, and G&A roles. Visit Matcher.io to see how we can support you. That's matchr.io.
So taking my role from banking into Google, there were parts that I loved about the banking job, and there were lots that I didn't. And I really wanted to move into a much faster paced, creative, innovative environment. So finding an organization, finding a department within the organization, Google Cloud was very young at the time, that I could clearly express my kind of hopes and dreams for this next bit of my career, I think was hopefully, what it was at the time, more sort of compelling to the interviewers than the fact that I perhaps didn't have all the obvious experience to date. And then as I've gone on, I've kind of accumulated lots of different bits of experience and skills, and tested out the same skills but in different contexts. I think a lot of sort of leadership and people management and strategic pieces of work and operational, kind of more tactical and logistical stuff. It's all kind of culminated in my current job, where I really I lead people and culture at TestGorilla. We'll talk about TestGorilla a bit in a bit, I'm sure. But
Yeah, tell me, maybe this is a good moment. Yes, share a little bit more about what TestGorilla does.
Yeah. TestGorilla we're a talent discovery platform. So we help companies all around the world to source and identify the very best talent for the roles that they have. We do that predominantly through skills-based hiring. So it's a mode of hiring that really fights against traditional hiring practices. When we're looking to hire candidates based on the experience they've had, their education, their CVs, and instead hire people based on the skills they have, the proven skills they have, and helping companies to match candidates with the relevant skills required for the jobs that are open. That's what TestGorilla does. We're a brilliant piece of software, and everyone should go and check us out. But I've been here, and it's so we aim to put people in dream jobs, right? When our vision is about 1 billion people in their dream jobs. We believe there's a dream job out there for everyone, and we just need to help people find those and help companies find people outside of traditional hiring process to put them into them. And certainly in my dream job, it definitely feels like all the tanglings of the previous piece of my career today are sort of making sense in this current role.
Yeah. Now looking back, right?
Yeah.
What did you think? Because you not only did it from finance to cloud sales, right, at Google. You then, you helped run Academy London. You worked in consulting for a little bit, and then you joined TestGorilla as the chief of staff, right? When you interviewed, did you feel that people were really assessing your skill, or was there like fear that you didn't have the right experience based on your resume? Like, what was your personal experience? And maybe let's translate that as well. Like, how does TestGorilla help eliminate those biases?
Yeah, I think there was certain points, certainly in the earlier part of my career. So moving from the banking job that I had, it was a graduate program, right? So that was actually pretty skills-based hiring, to be honest. Yeah, we're familiar. I think we still do them, right? But those days where you go along to a physical center, and these different kind of assessment days, and you're actually assessed in lots of different ways. So I guess that was actually kind of skill-based hiring. But then moving to Google, it was also a pretty junior entry-level job, right? So I think that there wasn't much expectation that I would already be a fantastic salesperson. So I think that was I was really probably assessed as a graduate, as an entry-level person, even though I spent 3 years in a bank, right? So I think it was a relatively junior role.
Yep.
And And as I went on to different roles, actually, there was a job that we've left out in the CV. So after doing a bit of consultancy work, I was a chief of staff at a fintech before moving to TestGorilla.
Yeah.
And yeah, that required a little bit more explanation.
Yeah.
Who are you? Why have you done 6 different careers in the space of not many more years than that?
Yeah.
Because people do look at CVs, right? And they take whatever signals they want to perceive from a CV, whether that's time spent in a role, the kind of companies that you've worked at, the university that you've been to. I think I've been lucky. I have a huge amount of privilege in the school that I went to, the companies I've worked at, that frankly, I'm very open about this. I think my CV and the sort of biased practices that happen when people apply recruit using CVs, I think I was favored for those, to be honest, in a way that people who don't necessarily have certain other things on their CVs wouldn't have been. TestGorilla, and the other part of your question was, how does TestGorilla sort of deal with this, right? So TestGorilla really, one of our kind of core sort of focuses and what we want to deliver to the world of hiring is this sort of democratizing opportunities, right? So if people don't have specific education experience or education or experience, or they're from an underrepresented group that tends to be discriminated against in traditional hiring processes, we believe that if we give the people the opportunity to have their skills tested, and if companies know what skills they should be looking for, which maybe we can get onto because that isn't always obvious, but if we can create an opportunity for that match to happen on a skills level, then we'll see the door being widened up for so many more people who to find their dream job that maybe would have been discounted otherwise because they have a non-traditional career path, or didn't have the right, quote unquote schools on their CV, etc.
So Olive, let's talk a little bit more about skill-based hiring in general, right?
Yes.
There's the word has been floating around for the last couple years, yet I see relatively little companies that fully embrace skill-based hiring, right?
Yeah.
So talk me through how, as a company, you should think of skill-based hiring, and what are some of the first steps that you can take in order to slowly move away from screening for resumes and implementing a skill-based hiring approach?
Of course. Yeah. So, it's funny. TestGorilla was one of the sort of the companies that really kind of put the terminology skills-based hiring on the map, to be honest. Yeah. And you're right. It's been a few years.
You did a good job. You did definitely did a good job.
Yeah, right. And you're right. Many companies are starting to use or starting to lean into an element of skills-based hiring. When I do conversations like this, or I speak to other audiences, the questions over the years have pivoted away from like, what actually is skills-based hiring, and more, how can I do it completely? How can I do it well? So skills-based hiring, just to sort of recap, it's really looking at the beyond those traditional measures. So CVs, which tend to include things like work sort of experience or education, and hiring on that basis, right? So it's using other tools and other kind of methodologies to hire. Now, skills tests are one way that you can do that, and the obvious one that many people think of when they think of skills-based hiring is what we do at TestGorilla, right? Create an assessment made up of a certain number of tests that can really test for the skills or the behaviors, the competencies, the technical skills, the sort of more human skills that are required in the role. That is one element, one kind of way of doing skills-based hiring. But it's more than that, right? Skills-based hiring doesn't stop there, but we like to look at it holistically. And throughout the hiring process, how can you add in different approaches to complement that skills test? So we say at TestGorilla, do your screening based on the skills test. So right at the beginning of the funnel, so that you're screening people into your hiring process, having already established that they have the perfect skills for the job. Then during the interviews, we really want to think about using structured interviews, right? Using structured interviews that are rigorously aligned to the needs to have the role, culture, match, etc., and asking every single one of those candidates the same questions. Doing more kind of multi-measure testing, so things like take-home assignments, work samples, that create another layer of assessment, really, of skills assessment, of checking, of verification, perhaps at a deeper level than you might be able to do in, say, a 60-minute test at the beginning of the process. So I think those three things for us, when we wrote TestGorilla, we were really saying those three things together creates a very holistic way of getting to know the full spectrum of a candidate. Yeah.
So how do you identify, like, for every role, the right skills? Like, how does that process work?
Yeah.
And how do you make sure that this aligned across the organization? Where I assume, like, also, like, based on my experience, some roles are easier to identify, at least what I would consider clear skills, and some are a little bit more fluffy and a little bit more vague, right? Like, so talk me through that. Talk me through that.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the process, right? I think we try to do a job analysis for every new job that we need to hire for, including backfills, right? I really have an allergy to just sort of rinse and repeat backfills. Right? We've got a customer support rep who's left. We need to fill that role, or we'll just bring back the job description that we used 2 years ago, and that will suffice. No. So we start with every new job opening with a very thorough intake meeting, and then sort of an analysis of the job and its requirements. That doesn't just come from the manager, but we also engage other stakeholders. For this person to be successful in this job with these other stakeholders, what's the job going to be? What are the skills that are going to be required? Over time, that changes, right? We're doing a lot of, like many other companies, we're doing a lot around AI transformation at the moment. So what does AI proficiency look like in general at TestGorilla? What does it look like in a given role? And establishing really what are the needs to have, and then finding a means to test it. Now, the needs to have, we have a whole, we've got 400 tests in our test library at TestGorilla. So generally, there is a way to sort of test in a structural way the skills that are required for the job. If not, we also have ability to ask custom questions and things like that in the test, so we can cover those bases. If there's any way that we can't test that in a test, then we've got our interview process to refine that and probe a little bit further. But I think it's true. I mean, it's difficult to nail down the exact skills all the time. But that, for me, that's the role of a manager, to know what their team needs to be doing, right?
Yeah.
You know what your team needs to achieve in the next 6-12 months, maybe not longer than that, depending on the stage and kind of growth of the company. But managers should be able to express what good looks like in the role. Yeah.
Is this something that you can do for maybe one job unit? Or is this something, if you want to do this successfully, this needs to be the whole organization that's behind? Like, what's your take there? Can you do this slowly and gradually and like grow into it? Or is this such a profound change of direction that this should be either the whole company should embrace this and do it, go big or go home?
Yeah. Well, I would say that we absolutely eat our own dog food at TestGorilla, and everyone has gone through this process, right? Sure, we're a bit different because this is what we do. But regardless of the department, regardless of the seniority, we have this process for everyone, right? So it's definitely possible and frankly recommended. We believe it's the only way to hire, skills-based hiring. And so we think that all organizations should be making the shift towards that. And I struggle to think of an industry or a company size or stage that shouldn't ultimately be aiming to hire everyone through skills-based hiring. That being said, it's a change management piece already, for many companies. And given perhaps a company's particular stage, size, the number of people that they're hiring, then maybe the sort of sensibilities of the people department, the hiring team. Yeah, I would start small. Start small with a little pilot group. Bring the key kind of stakeholders on board, do proper training and enablement for TA partners, find some champions in the business. And then once you've got the hiring nailed through skills-based hiring for a particular team or department or region, or however you divide your company, once you've got that really nailed, then look to expand further. Might also be interested, depending on what your timeline is, interesting to think about what the results are, right?
Yep.
How are the people who are hired through skills-based hiring performing against people who have been hired using more traditional processes, who maybe it's, we make our screening decisions based on CVs.
Yep.
But it takes a little bit longer to see those results, of course. But we know through some of our case studies and our research, also people not just using TestGorilla, but other forms of skills-based hiring, that satisfaction with new hires if they've been hired through skills-based hiring is generally higher than
Interesting.
Through
Interesting. So what if we zoom in on that a little bit, right? Like what are the main benefits of switching to a skill-based hiring approach?
Yeah, several. Which I love, because it means that skills-based hiring is relevant for just about anyone, depending on what they're trying to do in their hiring process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from a company perspective, right, we want the right people in the right job at the right time, doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And the skills-based hiring can do that, right? If we look at various studies around the validity of different hiring tools, skills assessment, skills test is basically as high as you can get in terms of a tool that predicts someone's success in a job. So proven skill, testing someone's skills and having clear, objective data to make hiring decisions based on what they can do is a strong predictor of job success.
Yeah,
that's great. Then you've got all the efficiency gains, right? So if you've got a company that deals with huge volumes of candidates, having a tool that can help you with confidence assess vast volumes and pull out the people who've performed the best, either against each other or just, again, at TestGorilla, you can, for every test result that someone has, you can compare it against any other person who's ever sat that test on TestGorilla ever, right? So you can say, there's marketing managers in the top percentile for, I don't know, some marketing XYZ test, right?
Yep.
So having a sort of an efficiency metric there, the ability to screen people through quickly, great.
Yep.
We've also got a lot of DEI and sort of unbiased hiring lens there, right? We're hiring people based on skills rather than our assumptions or our gut.
Yep.
I think candidates kind of love it too, to be honest, which people are sometimes shocked about, because it can, the idea of a test is a bit stressful sometimes.
Yeah.
Or I have to get questions that we're taking the sort of the human angle out of hiring because we're getting people to take a test first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what you do, right? I remember you telling me, but it's good for our listeners also to understand. So help me understand in terms of the recruitment process, how you run it at TestGorilla. Like what do these steps look like?
Test first. We test first. So we just, in our job descriptions, we have a link to the assessment and they sit the test and we get in touch with them once they've sat the test. Yeah.
And you automatically, when they've passed a certain threshold, that's when you get introduced to the candidate, right?
Well, so there's an automated message that goes out when they sort of click to apply. We tell them to sit the test and we provide lots of information about it. They sit the test. They get their test results, which is
Yeah.
really important as well, which people love. They love to see how well they performed on a test.
Yeah.
And then we will view the results, right? We will view the quantitative results, but also there are certain tests that for now are not rated in a sort of a quantifiable manner. If someone's done a video, answered a video question, or has written an essay question. So we take those different factors in. We do sometimes also look at CVs as well. There might be particular skills that we're specifically looking for. And this isn't about saying there's never any place for a CV, but it's about not making a hiring decision based on CVs.
Yep.
After that point, we invite a certain tranche, depending on the role, depending on the interest, to first round interview. It's normally with the hiring manager straight away, so we can just really get in there with the hiring manager from the get-go. I think that's important. It also shows a lot of buy-in to the candidates, that hiring managers are involved from the beginning.
Yeah.
There's a technical stage, which is that work sample, sort of take-home assignment, or it could just be a live kind of simulation where people are sort of figuring out stuff on the spot. And then we definitely have a culture interview, which culture and sort of behavioral interview with normally other just peers and stakeholders.
Yeah.
And then that's it. For our most senior roles, we also have a leadership interview that's less about interviewing, more about selling the role, and having some sort of leadership time to convince people that TestGorilla is brilliant if they're not already sold. And that's it. Yeah. But first is the assessment, for sure.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
In terms of skill-based hiring, what are some of maybe things to consider and really take into account whether skill-based hiring is the right fit for a organization?
Yeah. I think, after, 3 years and 3 years and 6 months of being at TestGorilla, I really struggle to think of any company where it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think that there are certain roles within an organization, perhaps more at sort of an executive level, where doing skills-based hiring, we still have even our most senior people take our tests.
Yep.
You might want to think about, even though I've just described the process, you might want to think about whether it would be more conducive to have a few kind of warm-up conversations, especially if you've sourced, you had hunters or whatever to source some candidates. You might want to think about whether they need to be warmed up a little bit more before blocking an assessment right in front of them. I think there might be some other roles. Perhaps we have the majority of the people that use TestGorilla tend to be sort of white collar sort of office jobs. Now we do have companies and customers who use TestGorilla for jobs outside the office, perhaps people who do more manual labor or people working in factories and kind of more hands-on work. But there is less of an obvious fit. So I think it might not be the most obvious choice to send to your whole hiring process around skill-based hiring. But I struggle to think of any organization that wouldn't benefit from it. And a desk environment. Yeah. For sure.
In terms of internal mobility, is that also something, especially with AI, the expectations are a lot of roles are going to be, changing.
Yeah.
Is that also something where skill-based hiring can play a huge role of going from a business analyst, finance analyst to someone that sells cloud solutions, for example?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Because I think we come back to this point of like, is it what you're actually doing that counts, or is it the skills that you're acquiring along the way that count most? And I think it's the latter, right? And I think if just taking me as an example, I work in HR now, we could never have mapped that. But actually, the various different skills that I've acquired along the way, they've been honed throughout, right?
Yeah.
So that it's less experience, but the skills that you acquire throughout that experience, just a slight nuance. So yes, I mean, companies should always be looking at the skills they require within their organization now and in the future. Skills mapping across the organization, recognizing where there are gaps. And so it totally stands to reason that, understanding what skills are in your organization, whether they're in use at the moment or whether they're more latent and we don't know about them as a company, or frankly, maybe even the person themselves doesn't really appreciate how skilled they are in a certain thing.
Yeah.
We at the moment, if we ever have instances of internal mobility and people moving, I don't know, we had someone who moved from HR, we moved into product. We do the assessment just to kind of validate our decision to move someone across and check that they have the relevant skills. We also, I think, we have companies, customers who are starting to use our tool for that more skills mapping piece, and certainly using skills to just the skills test to identify those skills that could be helped to sort of shape internal mobility and move the workforce around the evolving requirements. Yeah.
Last but definitely not least, right? In terms of where skill-based hiring is going and evolving, like what's if you look at your crystal ball, we're not going to hold this against you, of course, Olive, but like what trends do you see? Is this getting more and more adopted? Like, is this evolving? Are we going to, is the resume going to be made redundant as many people have predicted many times over? What's your take?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever say goodbye fully to resumes. They also provide a data point, right? And many good hires, great hires have been made using the CV, the resume, but it shouldn't be the only one. And I think we are moving away from that being the model. Certainly our research suggests that. One that I think is just going to die a very peaceful and timely death is the cover letter. I mean, I was hearing your voice. Need I say more? What's the point?
And especially with ChatGPT now around the corner.
Pointless. But I think another thing, and I think where skills-based hire is going is we're also thinking think about what we mean by skills, right? So at TestGorilla, we talk about the technical skills, but also more human skills. Those things like critical reasoning or communication skills or influencing. Those skills, they're as important, if not more important, than the core role skills. I think over time we're going to see organizations relying more on things like the human skills, because they will become the things that sort of endure in the time of more advanced sort of AI transformation. They are going to be the things that are the most important, and the AI will never be able to replicate or do for us. So I think skills-based hiring will start leaning a little bit more towards those human skills and become a little bit more holistic too. At TestGorilla, we're talking a lot more about kind of holistic hiring. We are launching kind of novel test types that start to think about behaviors, and as I sort of behavior and kind of cultural alignment as well between the candidate and the organization. Thinking about different ways to assess that so we can get a really rounded idea of the person. So we're not getting too hung up on just pure technical capabilities. They're still important, but having a kind of maybe a more holistic agreement or definition around what skills are and what will be required in the future of the workplace, I think will be what we're seeing coming down the line.
Hey, and Olive, what advice would you give heads of talents? They're interested, they've listened to this podcast. Where to start, how to experiment with it. What's your final advice there? Next to get in touch with TestGorilla.
Yeah, get in touch with TestGorilla for sure. Get in touch with us. We'll be very, very happy to show you some cool demos and share some case studies and stuff to get you inspired. I think really understand what you might want to fix in your hiring process. So we spoke a little bit earlier that, it's getting the right person in the job, right? But what's not going well in your hiring process? Do you want to boost diversity within your sort of candidate pool, your screened candidate pool? Do you want to reduce time to hire? Find a metric that you want to improve, and then build a little pilot around that. I think pick a few roles, probably roles that are maybe more junior, typically more easy to fill. Nothing too high stakes for your first dip in the water. Perhaps even a role that you've hired very recently with more traditional hiring methods. So it's easier to sort of compare and contrast, and go for it. A really tightly scoped project, a little pilot one, I think. Yeah. And you know what? We're talking about putting people into jobs, so I don't take this lightly. It's a hugely important, significant moment for someone who is going through a hiring process and being considered for a job. But I also think to treat your candidates well, even in this pilot phase. If it's not something that works for you, or you realize that this isn't the right moment to introduce skills-based hiring, you can always roll back, right? You can always fall back on your tried and tested processes. So I would say try it. I reckon you'll be pleasantly surprised. And if not, let us know also, because we might be able to sort of help and make some recommendations for how to try it again in the future.
Olive, what's the best way for people to find you? Is it just through LinkedIn? Is that the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, that's the best way for sure. Yeah, feel
Amazing.
free to drop a line. Yeah.
Olive, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your personal journey. And I'm excited to see in 2 years where we are going to be, and at least get rid of that cover letter, but also that we see many, many more people get assessed in the right way and land their dream jobs.
Yes, for sure. I hope so too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.